The hall of the Celestial Exchange shimmered like a jewel carved from light. Thousands of alien dignitaries gathered in concentric tiers, glittering in silks of plasma thread and scales polished to mirror sheen. The air hummed with the scent of ozone, the chatter of translators, and the sharp excitement of power. Today, history was being sold by the kilogram. On the central dais, bound in sleek magnetic cuffs and bathed in sterile spotlight, stood the last human general. General Cassandra Vale was not what most of the audience expected. She was not monstrous, nor scarred, nor radiating fury. She stood with the calm grace of someone perpetually unimpressed. Her hair, silvered at the tips by age and stress, fell neatly behind her shoulders. Her uniform, though torn, still bore the fading insignia of the Terran Defense Fleet. When the light hit the old metals, they gleamed like defiance. The auctioneer, a six-eyed insectoid with a voice like crushed glass, clicked his mandibles for silence. Lot number 01. The human general of the Terran Resistance. Verified authentic, psychically sealed, slightly insolent. Starting bid at 5 million Galactic credits. The crowd erupted into sound. War profiteers, slavers, historians, and collectors of rarities shouted their bids through glowing paddles. Each species wanted her for a different reason: prestige, curiosity, or revenge. None saw a threat. None except perhaps the small, thoughtful amphibian scholar in the back row who murmured, "I have studied their wars. One human strategist can erase entire fleets with arithmetic." His companion snorted. "Nonsense. They're extinct for a reason." Cassandra's gaze drifted across the tiers, noting each potential buyer with the mild interest of someone browsing a fruit market. Her lips curved slightly. To anyone else it might look like nervousness. To those who had fought beside her, it would have looked like calculation. Her mind was already mapping exits, counting guards, noting air vents. Even in chains, she strategized. "Charming specimen, isn't she?" cooed a crystalline aristocrat to her companion. "Look how docile. They said humans bit." At that, Cassandra finally spoke. Her voice was steady, her tone conversational. "We only bite when we're hungry. Or bored. Depends on the seasoning." The aristocrat froze mid-laugh, unsure whether to feel insulted or afraid. A ripple of uneasy amusement spread through the crowd. The auctioneer buzzed irritably. "The specimen speaks out of turn." "I'm terribly sorry," she said, smiling faintly. "It's a human defect. We use words when silence would suffice." The bids continued, climbing higher, faster. The auctioneer preened at the numbers, while Cassandra listened to the cadence of voices, matching them to species, influence, probable threats. Her eyes settled on a tall, armored figure near the front, Grand Strategist Crothul of the Galactic Empire. The stories said he conquered 7 sectors before breakfast. His armor shimmered with inlaid power circuits, and his every movement carried the arrogance of someone accustomed to obedience. Cassandra's smile widened almost imperceptibly. Predators recognize each other. Crothul raised one claw. 10 million. The hall gasped. The insectoid blinked all 6 eyes. 10 million confirmed by Grand Strategist Crothul. Do we have another? Silence. Even the wealthiest collectors bowed out. Crothul leaned back, confident, certain of his dominance. Cassandra tilted her head, studying him like an artist evaluating a blank canvas. The auctioneer's hammer descended. "Sold!" The word echoed through the chamber like the closing of a vault door. The crowd broke into applause, some mocking, some admiring, most simply entertained. Crothul rose from his seat, towering and magnificent, and descended the stairs to inspect his prize. Up close, his scent was metallic and sharp, the air around him thrumming with faint energy fields. "Human," he said in a voice that rumbled through the floor. "Your wars ended. Your people scattered. You stand before civilization now." Cassandra's eyes met his without flinching. "Civilization," she said softly, "is just conquest with better lighting." Crothul chuckled, a deep grinding sound. "You'll learn humility. I may even let you teach at the Imperial Academy, an artifact explaining the folly of resistance." "How thoughtful," she replied. You'll forgive me if I skip the lectures. My last class ended explosively. Her humor unsettled him. Not the words themselves, but the composure behind them. No trembling, no pleading, no despair. She spoke like someone evaluating a chessboard already won. He dismissed the unease. Humans, he reminded himself, were clever but predictable. Their defiance was ornamental. Guards approached, magnetically sealing her restraints. Cassandra did not resist. As they led her away, she glanced over her shoulder toward the audience and offered a polite nod, almost regal. Thank you all for your generosity, she said. I'll be sure to repay it in full. Laughter followed her exit, the sound of predators amused by prey pretending to be dangerous. Once outside the hall, the noise faded, replaced by the hum of containment fields and the echo of boots on alloy floors. The guards spoke in low, confident tones, assuming she did not understand their dialect. She did. She caught every word. She looks so fragile. The strategist will break her in a day. Humans always talk big before they cry. Cassandra smiled to herself. The insults were familiar, almost nostalgic. Long ago, other empires had said the same before learning that human endurance was measured in centuries. The transport bay awaited. A sleek vessel marked with imperial insignia, gleaming and arrogant. Crothall followed close behind, hands clasped behind his back. You seem unusually calm for a prisoner, he observed. I'm just enjoying the irony, she said. You call this peacekeeping. We used to call it tourism. He stared at her, uncertain if she mocked him or not. You humans talk as if the galaxy still fears you. Oh, Cassandra said lightly. They don't fear us. Not yet. The bay doors sealed with a hiss. She was guided up the ramp, her boots echoing in rhythm with the ship's pulsing core. Crothall turned to his adjutant. Place her in secured quarters. I will interrogate her personally once we reach the capital. As the ship lifted off, Cassandra's gaze wandered to the stars beyond the hangar shield. Cold, bright, and innumerable. Somewhere out there, old human relay satellites still floated, dormant and forgotten. Or perhaps not forgotten. Her lips parted in a quiet hum, an old Earth melody barely audible. One of the guards frowned. What is that sound? An old tradition, she said softly. We used to sing before a long trip. It calms the nerves. The guard scoffed. Humans are strange. Very, Cassandra agreed. The engines roared, and the stars blurred into motion. Within minutes, the vessel vanished into jump space, carrying with it the woman who once orchestrated wars that redrew galaxies. In the grand auction hall, the insectoid auctioneer counted profits while dignitaries exchanged gossip about the curious politeness of the human captive. None of them noticed the faint pulse that flickered through the distant communication arrays orbiting Vrixa Prime, the subtle activation of ancient Terran subroutines buried deep within galactic systems. Far from the capital, beyond mapped space, a long-dormant beacon blinked awake for the first time in a millennium. The signal was weak, almost a whisper, but it carried a single, encoded phrase. General secured. Back in the darkness of the Empire's ship, Cassandra closed her eyes and smiled. Not in victory, not yet, but in recognition. The first piece had moved. The galaxy simply didn't know the game had started. The strategist's flagship, the omen of order, was a cathedral of polished alloy and restrained arrogance. Every surface gleamed under sterile light, and every movement of the crew was synchronized with military precision. Cassandra Vale, seated at a narrow obsidian table, regarded the surroundings as one might a particularly bland museum, impressive, yet lacking soul. Across from her sat Grand Strategist Crothall, his chitinous armor refracting the light into green-gold shards. Between them steamed two porcelain cups of something that passed for tea. I am told, Crothall began, his voice rumbling like distant thunder, that humans find comfort in warm beverages during captivity. Consider this hospitality. Cassandra lifted her cup delicately. The liquid smelled faintly of iron and citrus. You're very kind, she said, sipping. A touch acidic, but then again, diplomacy always leaves an aftertaste. His eyes, Deep black pits behind layered lids, narrowed. You are bold for someone in chains. Habit, she replied with a small shrug. We humans have a long tradition of being conversational while doomed. Keeps the morale up. The corner of his mouth twitched, though whether amusement or irritation, she couldn't tell. Around them, officers lingered at a distance, pretending not to listen. They whispered about her composure, her casual tone, her unsettling lack of fear. Crothall gestured for them to leave, and the doors sealed with a hiss. The silence that followed felt deliberate, a test. You commanded their final fleet, he said. You could have surrendered. Instead, you scattered your forces and burned your own supply lines. Explain that. Cassandra placed her cup down with care. Because surrender implies belief in the victor's mercy. We'd studied enough history to know better. He leaned forward. And yet here you are. Human civilization is dust. Your colony's gone. The peace treaty ensured a millennium of stability, until your kind broke it. Did we? She asked lightly. The treaty was written by human hands, sealed with human technology, enforced through human relay systems. We never broke it. We just stopped maintaining it. He studied her as if parsing a code. You speak as though your species still holds influence. The Terran Union is extinct. Extinct is such a final word, she murmured. We prefer resting uncomfortably. He chuckled despite himself, a sound like cracking stone. Your humor will not save you. It never has, she said smiling. But it makes the paperwork more tolerable. Crothall rose, towering above her. I could extract the coordinates of your hidden bases from your mind. Your resistance cells, your sleeper agents, every secret you cling to. Cassandra tilted her head. You could try. But you'd risk seeing what we saw, how fragile empires look from orbit when their command chains collapse. You'd never sleep again. He stopped. The confidence in her tone made the air feel heavier. She wasn't bluffing. She didn't need to. Everything she said carried the calm inevitability of truth. He sat again, slower this time. You speak like someone who has already won. She looked past him to the viewport, where the stars stretched into luminous lines. Victory is just endurance measured in centuries. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. Crothall's hand tightened around his cup, the porcelain creaking. You presume your kind matters anymore. Oh, we do, she said softly. You just haven't noticed the ways yet. A faint tension settled between them, fragile as glass. To break it, she gestured toward the board game arranged beside her plate. It was his idea, a gesture of condescension, a test of intellect. The board shimmered with holographic grids and moving icons shaped like fleets and planets. I hear this is called Stratagem Prime, she said, examining the pieces. Galactic officers play it to simulate conquest, yes? Indeed. It requires logic and vision, qualities your people lacked. Cassandra smiled faintly. Shall we? He agreed with a curt nod. They played in silence for several minutes, their moves methodical. Crothall struck with overwhelming force, confident in numerical superiority. Cassandra responded with subtle diversions, sacrificing minor fleets, pulling him deeper into false corridors. You leave your territories undefended, he observed. Do I? Moments later, his flagship piece vanished in a cascade of digital fire. She leaned back, hands folded. You focused on my borders, not my reach. Classic mistake. He stared at the board, disbelief flickering through his expression. Luck. Luck, she echoed. Is just preparation disguised as coincidence. He reset the board with a grunt. Another round. By the third match, he had grown restless. She had won each time without visible effort, her strategies elegant and infuriatingly opaque. The hum of the ship filled the silence, punctuated only by the quiet clink of pieces moving. You enjoy this, he said. Winning? No. Watching people underestimate me? That's my hobby. Her tone was mild, yet something in it lingered like the echo of a threat. Crothall leaned back, watching her carefully. You are different from the records. They described humans as volatile, emotional, easily broken. Cassandra tapped a finger against her cup. We are emotional. We just learned to weaponize it. He considered that, his expression darkening. You sent a transmission yesterday. A request to message Earth's Memorial Outpost. The content was peculiar. Was it? She asked, sipping her tea. It read, * the auction was delightful. Drinks are on me, * a joke. Of course, she said pleasantly. Humor is how we process trauma. But her eyes gleamed, and something beneath the humor suggested layers he couldn't yet see. Crothall gestured sharply. You will explain the meaning of that message. Cassandra tilted her head, as though pitying him. You wouldn't believe me if I did. The ship's lights flickered, briefly. Crothall frowned. Power fluctuation. Irrelevant. Everything's relevant, she said quietly. You just haven't learned where to look. He slammed his fist onto the table. Enough riddles. You are a prisoner of the Empire. You will cooperate. Cassandra regarded the dent his blow had left on the metal. You know, grand strategist, in my experience, shouting doesn't make someone sound powerful. Just insecure. His mandibles flared in anger. You mock me. I critique you, she corrected. There's a difference. He inhaled sharply, composing himself. You test boundaries because you believe you still have control. You do not. The Empire does. She smiled, almost kindly. Empires are temporary. People are adaptive. Guess which one lasts longer? The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. For the first time, Crothall seemed uncertain. Not of his strength, but of his understanding. Cassandra saw it in the flicker of hesitation that crossed his face, the faint realization that he didn't know what game he was playing anymore. She rose slowly, restrained but dignified. If we're done, I'd like to rest. I have a long trip ahead. He gestured for the guards. Return her to her quarters. Double the security. And no more transmissions. Cassandra inclined her head politely. A pleasure as always. As the doors closed behind her, Crothall remained seated, staring at the tea she'd left untouched. A faint ring of condensation circled the cup's base, perfect, deliberate. Only when he leaned closer did he notice the faint engraving burned into the table's surface, formed by the heat of her cup. A single word in Terran script. Checkmate. The strategist froze, his pulse accelerating as he summoned a technician to scan for data residue. The report came back moments later. No foreign materials, no transmission signals, no trace of tampering. And yet, as the technician departed, the ship's lights dimmed again, longer this time. The engines hiccuped before stabilizing. Crothall sat back, claws tightening around his chair's edge. The human's words replayed in his mind. Everything's relevant. In her isolated quarters, Cassandra lay on the narrow cot, eyes open in the half-light. Beyond the walls, power conduits whispered. Somewhere in the depths of the flagship, encrypted human code was already spreading. Slow, silent, invisible. She closed her eyes, smiling faintly. The galaxy believed she'd been captured. That illusion would last just long enough. Reports came in like a tidal wave, overwhelming the command consoles aboard the Omen of Order. Systems flickered, grids overloaded, navigation algorithms misfired. Fleets separated by light years veered into empty space or collided with uncharted asteroids. The Empire's communication network, which had held for 1,000 years, was unraveling faster than any human strategist could have predicted. And yet, Cassandra Vale sat in her quarters, sipping tea, observing the chaos with quiet amusement. Crothall stormed into the command bridge, his armored steps echoing against polished alloy. Around him, officers shouted over alarms, their compound voices straining against the cacophony of failing relays. Report! He barked, each syllable vibrating through the hull. A young lieutenant, scales glistening with panic, spun to attention. Sir! Multiple fleet nodes have lost synchronization. The transport convoys are rerouting themselves into enemy space. Cassandra, standing behind the glass viewport, smiled faintly at the stars rushing past in slipstream. She spoke as if describing a simple chessboard. Curious. You built an entire galaxy on human technology, then assumed we'd never touch the pieces again. Crothal's mandibles clicked in irritation. Explain yourself, prisoner. What have you done? I did nothing, she said smoothly. Or perhaps everything. Depends on your perspective. The bridge erupted into chaos. Officers barked orders, attempting to regain control of automated defenses, while distant fleets drifted like ghosts. Even seasoned admirals, veterans of countless campaigns, could not reconcile the inexplicable failure of systems they had trusted implicitly. Screens flashed red, alarms screamed, and the usual confidence of the imperial hierarchy crumbled into frantic murmurs. One officer turned to Crothall, voice trembling. Grand strategist, it's as if the human networks themselves are active, like they're deciding what to allow. Yes, Cassandra said from her post, calm as if commenting on the weather. Deciding exactly who gets to play with your toys. Crothall swallowed, his confidence eroding. Impossible, he muttered. Humanity is extinct. Their infrastructure is ancient, dormant. This chaos cannot be their doing. She chuckled softly. Dormant, yes. Forgotten, no. We always leave breadcrumbs, just in case someone underestimates us. Alarms on the main display showed the collapse of the Galactic Peace Treaty enforcement nodes. Ships that had enforced the centuries-long truce were now drifting, systems frozen, communication dead. Worlds that had relied on human-built systems to maintain governance fell into confusion. Merchants collided in hyperspace lanes, and colonies that had never known conflict suddenly became tinderboxes. Signal analysis confirms, the young lieutenant stammered. This is not random. The sequences align with Terran coding protocols. Crothall froze, the reality sinking in. You, humans set a trap. Not we, Cassandra said softly, almost tenderly. I did. The Empire assumed a puppet general could be controlled, yet here we are. He struggled to process her calm demeanor amid the mounting chaos. His fleets, trained for precision and obedience, were already turning on themselves, unable to discern friend from foe. Every maneuver they executed fell prey to latent human subroutines that had lain dormant for centuries, waiting for activation. Cassandra moved to the center of the bridge, chains clinking softly, but never slowing her gait. You see, your empire relied on perfection, on your networks, on trust that you understood the rules. I simply reminded the galaxy who wrote them. Officers whispered nervously among themselves. One remarked to another. The human sold at auction, the one we called a prize, she has become the architect of our undoing. Architect? Crothall growled. She is only a single human. Cassandra's smile deepened, faintly chilling. Single, yes. But humans are long-term players. We study, we wait, we set patterns centuries in advance. By the time you notice, the board has shifted beyond recognition. The strategic displays pulsed red as human stealth fleets emerged from previously undiscovered wormholes, their designs sleek and predatory. These were not remnants of resistance fighters. These were carefully preserved, calibrated units designed to strike precisely at the Empire's critical nodes. Fleets Crothall had considered secure were being disabled before they could respond, and supply chains were vanishing mid-transport. He clenched his claws, fury laced with disbelief. You rely on trickery, on sabotage. This is not warfare, it is subversion. Cassandra leaned lightly against the viewport, watching distant explosions flicker across hyperspace corridors. Subversion is simply another form of strategy. You call it trickery, I call it efficiency. The bridge fell into silence, save for the hum of failing engines and the occasional shouts of panicked officers. Crothall's mind raced. Humanity had been a nuisance, then forgotten. Now one human, her, was dismantling an empire that had spanned 1,000 worlds. And she did it with a calmness that made every panic-stricken yell sound absurd. You underestimated us, Cassandra said, turning her gaze to him. You assumed the peace treaty was an end. It was a pause, a test. And you failed spectacularly. The display screens flickered again, showing distant planets in disarray. Trade routes collapsed, colonies isolated, fleets misaligned. The Empire's orderly galaxy was dissolving in real time, all under the direction of a species thought extinct, guided by the woman they had auctioned like a trinket. Crothal's jaw tightened, a mixture of rage and fear. "What is your objective?" "Observation," she said lightly. "And a little amusement. Perhaps you'll understand in hindsight the importance of respecting human foresight." A sudden alert drew his attention. One of the flagship subroutines had detected unusual data packets moving through the network. They bore no encryption signature Crothall recognized. Cassandra's faint humming filled the room, though he did not yet connect it. "Your empire built walls," she said, voice calm as ever. "We built keys." Crothall's officers looked to him for direction, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Even the most disciplined commanders hesitated, their confidence undermined by cascading failures beyond their control. Every calculation they had relied upon for centuries now produced only error. From her vantage at the viewport, Cassandra traced her fingers along the control panel's edge. "The galaxy believes it can survive without humans," she murmured. "I am here to disabuse them of that notion." Explosions shimmered on the distant hyperspace screens, silent but terrifying. The Empire's fleets blinked out of alignment, their coordination crumbling. Systems designed to maintain peace were failing, as though an invisible hand had loosened the threads. Crothall exhaled through his mandibles, his confidence fracturing. "So, this is war?" Cassandra's expression remained serene, almost polite. "War, peace, chaos, it's all a matter of perspective. You built a galaxy on a human blueprint. I merely chose to redraw it." He froze as the first human stealth squadron engaged, precisely hitting nodes critical to the Empire's command chain. Alerts flashed with red urgency, and the officers erupted into shouting. Crothall's calm, his reputation, and his empire teetered on the brink. She sipped her tea once more, the faintest smile on her lips. "You should learn," she said quietly, "to never assume that a single human cannot change everything." The bridge descended into chaos, alarms screaming, officers scrambling, and fleets spinning out of control. Crothall realized, belatedly, that the Empire was not merely under threat, it was being rewritten. And at the center of it all stood Cassandra Vale, smiling, polite, and utterly lethal. The galaxy had blinked first. The Empire was only now beginning to understand that the game had already shifted beyond their perception, and the hand that moved the pieces belonged to a human. The flagship's bridge hummed with an eerie calm, the chaos of failing fleets reduced to distant flickers on the holoscreens. Cassandra Vale stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind her back, watching the galaxy fracture like a shattered mirror. Stars streaked past in hyperspace, distant planets spinning helplessly as human subroutines silently rewrote the rules of engagement. The galaxy, built on centuries of alien arrogance, was bending to a human will, quiet, precise, and unrelenting. Crothall slumped in his command chair, claws gripping the armrests so tightly his armor creaked. Around him, officers whispered in terrified awe, their confidence evaporated by the revelation that the peace treaty, a 1,000-year bulwark of stability, was nothing more than a facade maintained by human design. Cassandra's presence had never been merely symbolic. She was the trigger, the strategist whose patience spanned generations. Cassandra turned slightly, her gaze sweeping over the bridge. "You built monuments to peace," she said softly, "while sitting atop systems we created. Impressive architecture, fragile foundations." A nervous officer ventured. "General, what is it that you want?" She smiled, serene and unsettling. "Control, of course. But not in the way you think. I am not here to conquer planets, nor to slaughter fleets unnecessarily. I am here to remind the galaxy that we humans write the rules, even when you think we've vanished." Crothall's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "You speak of balance. And yet, the systems you've unleashed, entire fleets lost, colonies in turmoil, this is devastation." "Devastation is subjective," she replied. "From your perspective, yes. From ours, necessary correction." She traced a finger along the hollow display, where Imperial ships spun erratically, unable to fire or communicate. We didn't just survive. We prepared. Centuries of patience are finally paying dividends. The distant hum of transmissions, unnoticed by most of the bridge, shifted into a recognizable pattern. Human encryption bloomed across alien networks like frost on glass, slowly establishing control, restoring stability on human terms. Cassandra's subroutine arrays had been silent observers for centuries, waiting for a single signal. Now that signal had arrived. Crothal's eyes, black pits behind layered lids, narrowed. So this is why you allowed yourself to be captured. The auction, your orchestrated exposure, it was all a lure. Cassandra inclined her head, polite as a guest at a tea ceremony. Precisely. They underestimated me, underestimated humanity, underestimated what patience and subtlety can achieve. You auctioned me like a trinket, and in return, I turned your empire into a demonstration of our efficiency. Officers whispered furiously, trying to make sense of what they were witnessing. Ships once aligned perfectly were now caught in cascading failures, yet simultaneously, some systems, those under Cassandra's invisible control, activated with precision, neutralizing threats without a single human soldier firing a shot. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and the pieces moved according to human design. One officer finally dared. "General, will you spare Crothal?" Her gaze met his, calm and unwavering. "I do not seek vengeance. I seek balance. You may consider yourself fortunate that I appreciate politeness and potential." She allowed herself a small, almost teasing smile. "Besides, you might yet be useful." Crothal's claws flexed, a tension that spoke of centuries of command now stripped bare. "And if I refuse to cooperate?" Cassandra's smile widened, delicate and chilling. "Then you will witness the full consequences of underestimating humanity. You already see the beginning." She gestured toward the holoscreens. "Every empire relies on systems, on trust, on predictability. We engineered it all. Every failure you see is intentional. Every success, calculated." She moved across the bridge with measured grace, chains forgotten in the confidence of someone who had mastered centuries of strategy. "Do you see now why humans were never conquered, why the peace treaty lasted a millennium? We are patient predators, masking ourselves with civility." A distant comm signal lit up. Cassandra's private console blinked. A message from Earth Command appeared, terse and encoded. "Phase 2, reconstruction initiated." She read it, eyes reflecting the light of countless stars. Humanity was not returning to conquer by force, but to rebuild, to assert control subtly and permanently. She looked at Crothal, who remained seated, jaw tightening. "We return as architects, not destroyers. But do not mistake kindness for weakness." Her tone was soft, almost intimate, yet it carried the weight of centuries of unbroken strategy. The holoscreens now displayed a synchronized network of human fleets, quietly stabilizing critical nodes, restoring communication lines, and subtly reshaping galactic order. The Empire's panic was visible to all, yet humanity's silent hand corrected what it chose to, leaving chaos only where it served as lesson and leverage. Cassandra stepped back to the viewport, arms folded, watching the galaxy bend without touching a single enemy vessel directly. "Peace was delightful," she murmured, almost to herself. "But control, now that's eternal." Crothal finally rose, a mixture of awe and frustration etched across his armored frame. "And the galaxy will obey you?" Her gaze met his, calm and unflinching. "Not because it has to. Because it must. It has been conditioned to understand that the consequences of ignoring humanity are absolute. And now, every corner of the Empire knows it." She allowed herself a faint chuckle, the sound incongruously light against the backdrop of galactic turmoil. "It is almost humorous, isn't it? You spent millennia believing we were weak, extinct, irrelevant. Yet here I stand, smiling, while the galaxy bends in response to the work of my ancestors and me." A soft tremor passed through the ship's hull as distant fleets reacted to human subroutines, systems falling into place with eerie precision. Colonies previously isolated now reported a strange calm, a stabilizing influence they could not name, all without a single human physically present. Cassandra's strategy, centuries in planning, was unfolding flawlessly. Crothal's mandibles clicked sharply. And what of the other empires, the councils, the alliances? Cassandra turned fully, her chains lightly glinting under the viewport's light. They will learn quickly. Observation first, correction second. Humanity does not require conflict to assert dominion. We prefer patience, subtlety, and the occasional, perfectly timed smile. The galaxy in that instant seemed to pause. A collective shiver ran through imperial systems, through alien bureaucracies, through fleets and colonies alike. Humanity had revealed its truth. The polite, smiling species long assumed extinct was in fact the apex strategist, the silent predator of millennia. She lifted her cup of tea, still warm, and sipped it deliberately. "To balance," she said softly, "and to understanding why it's dangerous to underestimate a human." Crothall could only stare, claws flexing, as the full weight of realization settled upon him. Empires did not collapse through force alone. They fell through subtlety, strategy, and the quiet certainty of a species that had waited patiently for the right moment. Cassandra allowed herself one final smile, serene, polite, terrifying. The galaxy would never forget it.